There have been a lot of rumors on Twitter about Jerome Powell potentially resigning or being forced to resign or potentially being fired. So today I want to look at the rumors. I want to look at whether these rumors could be true. And if they are true, I want to look at what could actually happen to financial markets, because what you saw is that the markets got nervous when the rumors came out that Jerome Powell may actually resign today. Now, bear in mind that this is the first time that Jerome Powell is actually speaking today at 1 p.m. EST. It's the first time that Jerome Powell is speaking since he had a one-on-one meeting with Trump. And so we need to find out whether there is actually truth in these rumors. That's the first thing that I really want to speak about. The next thing that I want to speak about is altcoins, because listen, if you've been holding altcoins, it's been a rough ride this season. And I pulled out this chart over here, which shows you the others, the crypto total market cap top 10 dominance, the dominance of the top 10, the crypto markets excluding the top 10. And you can see that it's broken a 10-year trend line. And that just shows you the extent at how bad this lack of alt season actually is. So I think we need to discuss today whether or not there is going to be an alt season at all. And if we are going to get an alt season, what is this alt season going to be like? Because it's certainly not a traditional alt season. So today, it's all about Trump and whether or not we're going to get an alt season and what the alt season is going to be like. So if that sounds good to you, you know what to do. Obliterate the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get the show on the road, guys. All right, let me know in the chat if you think that Jerome Powell is going to resign today. Right now, it is 9:30 EST. I think he speaks at 1 EST. So if he speaks at 1 EST, let me know if you think he is going to resign or if he has been forced to resign or whether he's going to get fired by Trump or whether it's just going to be business as usual. Let me know in the chat what you actually think. I'm going to give you my point of view later today. And then alt season, because the alts are absolutely bleeding. And I think we need to have a chat about alt season because, I mean, spoiler alert, and you'll hear this at the end of the show, but I don't really think there's going to be an alt season this year. I think it's going to be a very different kind of alt season. So let's get the show on the road, guys. And if you haven't already smashed the like button, let me just tell you what the like button does. When you hit the like button, specifically when you hit it in the beginning of the show, it tells YouTube that this is a good show from the beginning of the show. And that gets YouTube algorithm, which is this algorithm that we're fighting against every single day to get views. It tells the algorithm to circulate our content. So please, I'm asking if you could just hit the like button early in the show. And that would help the YouTube algorithm know that this is good content if you think it's good content. And if you don't think it's good content, then you shouldn't be here. Anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes in the show because there's a lot to talk about today. Let's quickly just recap the monthly candle. So Saturday night was the close of the monthly candle. You can see that that's the highest monthly candle we've ever had. We've now had a monthly candle close at 104,707, which is by far the highest monthly close we've ever had. I stand under correction, but I think that's the previous monthly candle was at about 102, 102.4, 102.5, 102.6, depending on the exchange that you actually landed up on. That's not the whole story though, because look at the S&P 500. The S&P 500 actually had its best month since November, rising 6.2%. And it's very rare to get the S&P rising 6.2% in a month. In fact, it gained 6.15% in May. And there have been 6 times in history when the SPX gained at least 5% in 6 times in the whole of history that the S&P gained at least 5%. In May, the index generated an average 12-month gain of 20%, a low of 8%, and a high of 30% when it's finished green 100% of the time. So I guess it's a good omen when you close up so much in May. I do believe, though, that the best story in May is actually the story of ETH because, well, I mean, half the story is that it's a story of ETH because whilst Bitcoin, if you look at the Bitcoin charts, if you look at where Bitcoin came from, so Bitcoin in May was up, I think, 10.5%, 10.99%. But ETH was actually up 40.84%. I guess that is only half the picture, though, because obviously when you get a month like we had in February where ETH was down 31.95%, you're going to need to eventually get back to some kind of normality or some kind of equilibrium. And so the 40.84% in May still doesn't make up for the total loss. In fact, I want to show you something as it relates to the total loss of Bitcoin and ETH. I wonder if I've got that tweet. Let's see if I've got it here somewhere. there was a tweet that basically shows that we had this in May, but even after this performance, we've had like a dreadful performance for ETH. Another one that we should probably look at is at gold, because gold also had a fantastic month. Here's the tweet. So you can see even with ETH, even though the month was a very good month, just look at 1 year ago. And I wrote it. This is what I think Max Payne feels like and looks like in a tweet. So you got ETH, you got Bitcoin a year ago, yesterday on the 31st of May. Bitcoin 67,561. ETH was at 3,769. A year later, Bitcoin is at 104,000, call it, and ETH is at 2,534. And that's what actually prompted me to maybe speak about Altseason today, because yes, I know we've all been in the alts, but being in alts has been a very painful exercise. If this is like the main alt, look at Solana. Bitcoin was 67,561. Sol was at 166. Sol is now below 166. It's at 155, and Bitcoin's at 103, which kind of means that all this hard work, all this effort, all this energy, all this searching for alpha, you should have just put your money into Bitcoin and you'd probably just be better off. And that's maybe half of the story. So we'll talk about the other half of the story when we actually do that. Quick recap of year-to-date returns. Gold, GLD, or the gold ETF, is up 25%. Bitcoin up 12% this year. The Nasdaq is pretty flat, 2% up this year. US dollar minus 7% this year. So you can kind of see what the year-to-date returns have actually been like. The oil return at the bottom is actually quite a good return, because it shows that inflation is actually going to come down. And then I think probably worth noting this. So Bitcoin has just done 7 straight green weeks in a row. So you can see it over here. We can just get you a good Bitcoin chart. That's the monthly. Let me just change the time frame to the weekly over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, the interesting thing is, when Bitcoin has done 7 green weeks in a row, right? There have been 12 runs of bigger than 6 weeks up in Bitcoin's history for this table. The average gain is about 77%. The average consolidation afterwards, though, is 9 weeks. So generally, when you have 7 green weeks in a row, the average consolidation afterwards is usually about 9 weeks. So that could point us in the direction of a lull this summer. If you go back on the history, it could give us a bit of a lull this summer. I think that we're going to get a bit of a surprise this summer. I don't think it's going to be a lull. I don't think it's going to be a lull. I think it's going to be a bit of a surprise. Anyway, let's talk about the main story of the day, which I guess has to be these rumors. And I thought it started yesterday, that there are rumors that Jerome Powell will resign on Monday and the Trump administration will replace him with someone who's more intent on actually lowering interest rates. And then the Bitcoin bros obviously say, bro, if this happens, prepare for a parabolic run. No, guys, there's not going to be a parabolic run. If Jerome Powell gets forced to resign, then I don't think there's going to be a parabolic run, even though the crypto bros believe that it's all about this interest rate thing, and that if Trump is actually forced to resign, or he does actually quit, we will actually get this parabolic run, and we will get the interest rates going down. See more, it's coming up from 𝗏𝗏, rumors of Powell resigning, Ukraine bombing this week. Then there's another one, rumors spreading that Powell will resign on Monday. So we are on Monday, and Powell is going to be speaking. He's going to be speaking at 1 p.m. EST. And it's the first time that he's actually speaking since he was invited to the White House by Trump. So you can see we actually dug up the records. Here are the records over here. At the president's invitation, Chair Powell met with the president today. That was it, from the White House, to discuss economic developments, including growth, employment, and inflation. Chair Powell did not discuss his expectation for monetary policy, except to stress that the path of policy will depend entirely on the incoming economic information and what that means for the outlook, obviously, because that's what Powell always says. So let's quickly talk about this. Firstly, I want to just say categorically that I think that there's another post. Okay. It says, breaking, Chair Powell will officially resign tomorrow, and the Trump administration is expected to cut rates immediately following his resignation. Bangkok Bird says, big if true. Bangkok Bird, look, I agree with you that it is big if true, but I also think that it's absolutely not true. So let me tell you why I think it's not true. First of all, I believe that Powell has always been committed to Fed independence, and he's always stressed that there's no way that Trump will fire him, that regardless of what the president wants, they are a non-partisan organization. They're not behind one party or another, etc., etc., etc. And Powell has always been the type of person to fight for the Fed independence. So if Trump did want him to leave, I don't think that he would go down without a fight. Okay, so I don't think that he is officially or that he's the one putting in his resignation. So let's start at that point over there. Then you go into the thing, well, then can Trump actually threaten to fire Powell? And if he did, could he actually fire Powell? And the answer is, under extreme circumstances, under exceptional and extreme circumstances, yes, actually, the president of the United States can fire a sitting Fed chairperson, right? So each Fed member shall hold office for a term of 14 years from the expiration of his term as expiration of the term of his predecessor, unless sooner removed for cause by the president. So the president can actually remove a sitting Fed chair, okay? But you cannot remove a sitting Fed chair because of a policy issue. You can remove a sitting Fed president if there has been just cause, and just cause is misconduct or incapacity, but certainly not policy disagreements. Now, I think we can all agree that maybe we want Powell to reduce interest rates, and we want Powell to start QE because that's what's going to bring in the Altseason. But I think we can all agree that definitely Powell is not incapacitated. And I say that for sure, Powell at the moment is very, very, very fit to serve as the Reserve Bank governor. And I actually think, to be honest, I think he's quite a good Reserve Bank governor. Yes, of course, I'd love for interest rates to actually be reduced, just like Powell would, and just like everybody else would. But if I was sitting in Powell's shoes, I don't believe that on good conscience I could reduce interest rates when there's so much tariff uncertainty. One day there are tariffs, one day there aren't tariffs, one day the court rules, and tariffs cause prices to be increased, and increased prices cause increased inflation. And it's like, I don't know if you've ever worked for a corporate, right? When you work in a corporate, they have like this thing called a job review or like a performance review. And they look at your performance and they say, like, did you achieve your actual objectives? And they measure you basically as to whether you achieved your objectives or not. And remember that Powell's objectives are very simple objectives. Reduce inflation and reduce unemployment. It's like two very basic things. Problem is that he cannot reduce inflation with any other tool other than interest rates. And if Trump keeps increasing prices through tariffs, then Powell is going to have to sit on his hands and not actually reduce the interest rates. And so I think that Powell is very, very much not incapacitated to run this. He's definitely, or at least I don't know what he does in his spare time, but I don't believe that Powell is going to that Powell has had any misconduct. But you never know. In politics, sometimes they may dig up a story. Okay, so that is the thing. So Powell can't fire it. And also, if you look at the poly markets, you can see that the odds of Trump removing J. Powell in 2025 are nowhere near panic station. So I think, long story short, don't worry about this rumor. If you want to read more about it, there's a full article today in Good Morning Crypto. You can get a Good Morning Crypto. You can get Good Morning Crypto, which is our free crypto newsletter. There's a link below. You can sign up. It's absolutely free. And there's also the Daily Candle, which gives you 5 altcoin trades, the best 5 altcoin trades every single day. Anyway, so for now, look, the rumors are still out there. The markets are on edge. And yesterday when the rumors came out, the one thing that we saw is that the gold chart actually started spiking. So you can see the gold chart actually started spiking. Usually gold spikes when there's uncertainty. You can see that this is what happened yesterday. That was the gold candle from yesterday. But I actually think that the reason why this happened is actually got nothing to do with Powell, and actually a lot more to do with this, which is this insane drone attack that Ukraine executed against Russia. So I don't know if you guys followed the story or didn't follow the story, but it's quite an insane attack. So what happened was the Ukrainians created a drone attack, and they went and struck a very strategic Russian military airbase, which housed the majority of the Russian nuclear deployers. And these drones were so sophisticated that they were actually made in Russia. They were deployed in Russia. So they had these. I'll see if I've got this I don't have the actual tweet here, but they were actually they were made in Russia. They were made in Russia. They were deployed in Russia, and they literally flew over the Russian airspace and bombed and destroyed the I think 27 out of the 55 that they claim they had. So what Adam Cochrane says here is actually pretty interesting. He said, look, people don't realize yet the incredible geopolitical balance of power that actually took place yesterday. Russia's ability to deliver a nuclear strike is now the weakest it's ever been. The Tu-95 and Tu-160s are Russia's two class of long-range nuclear bombers. The public data estimates that 30 to 40 of the T-95s and 13 to 15 of the T-160s. Russia claims there's 55 T-95s. Either way, if 27 were confirmed destroyed, with the data still incoming, that's about 33 to 70% of Russia's long-distance bombers, which have now been destroyed. Also, they hit 1 of 8 of the remaining A-50 radar aircraft arsenal. So, massive attack by Ukraine onto Russia in a period where they're supposed to be brokering a peace deal. And you can see here, I mean, what I said, look, I don't believe that Ukraine could have conceptualized, executed, funded an attack like this all alone. From the media reports, it feels like Zelensky's very much on the back foot. And so it feels to me like the tensions between Trump and Putin of the last couple of days and weeks, I think are somehow being channeled into some kind of assisted attack here. At least that's my view. So YouTube, please don't remove my content. But it does feel like it does feel like that. And I think what the market's worried about now is the market's worried about a nuclear response. Like the market's worried about a nuclear response. That's basically what's going on here. So yeah, I mean, if you look at a nuclear response, again, 16% chance. So not a very big chance, but I mean, there could be a nuclear weapon detonation in 2025, according to Polymarkets. It's now sitting at about a 16% chance. And I think that is what caused the gold candle. And I think that in this case, Bitcoin was actually correlated to gold, as it has been in recent history. And so that is why you got the Bitcoin pump, and that's why we got the highest weekly Bitcoin close. And I don't think that it has anything to do with this Powell thing. I think it's much more to do with the Russia-Ukraine Air Force issues. All right, let's talk about altcoins, because I think that's why you guys are all here. You're all a bunch of degens, and you don't really care about Bitcoin. You don't really care about macro. You care about altcoins. But I think holding altcoins has actually been quite a rough thing to do in the past couple of weeks and months, and in fact for this whole cycle. When you look at it like this, it's not such a bad picture, right? Specifically when you look at it like that. Say if you've been holding altcoins for the last year, hasn't been a great run, but if you compare it to if you change the settings in the bubble, so let's just actually go to settings over here and actually compare it to the Bitcoin price, what you can see is that this picture really starts to change. And I'm actually gonna pop these Altcoin virtual SPX and just show you how few tokens in the past year have actually outperformed Bitcoin. Like XRP's outperformed Bitcoin, but also had a very bad run against Bitcoin. Hyperliquid's outperformed Bitcoin. Sui's outperformed Bitcoin, but very, very, very few tokens have actually outperformed Bitcoin in the last 12 months. And to make it worse, if you look at other charts, like this is the dominance of the top 10 the top altcoins excluding the top 10 against the total dominance chart, basically, right? And you can see that they've actually broken a 10-year trend line. There's a trend line from 2015, and they've actually broken below a 10-year trend line. So altcoins, specifically when you exclude the top 10, have completely broken a 10-year trend line going down. And this looks like it's probably it feels like it's not really going to end, right? We've also never seen a weekly close above 73.69 when you add the Bitcoin dominance, the USDT dominance, and the USDC dominance. And so that is effectively a measure that takes the Bitcoin dominance but excludes the stable coins, right? And so what it is, I mean, he has another visual representation of it, which is something that I posted earlier in the weekend, where I said, this is really what max pain looks like. Even if you've been holding the best altcoins, the Solanas, the ETHs, the return that you've made against Bitcoin in the last 1 year has been absolutely abysmal, right? So let's quickly just for fun, actually just look at what your returns are on the ETH BTC chart. If you held ETH instead of holding Bitcoin on the last 1 year returns. So let's go to, what are we in now? We are in June. So let's go to June last year. June 24. So that's May 24. That's June 24 over here. And that is there. So if you've held ETH in Bitcoin terms, you're down about 56%, more or less 56%. If you held SOL, so let's look at the SOL BTC chart. So if I look at the SOL BTC chart and I look at the returns in the last 1 year. So let's go back to June last year, which is somewhere around here. June, here we go, June last year. So there's the June candle last year. And we go all the way back down to here. Even if you've been holding SOL, okay, let's just quickly escape that. Even if you've been holding SOL, you've had really bad returns. I'll try and refresh that chart. Okay, let's just quickly go back to the SOL BTC chart. SOL BTC. And let's quickly just get the returns in the last year. It hasn't been good. I can tell you for sure it hasn't been good. So we'll go back onto the weekly and we'll just get our measuring stick over here. And we will go to 24 June. June. Let's take that. So even if you've been holding SOL, you've underperformed Bitcoin by 40% this year, which is quite depressing because all the activity, all the action, all the trenches, everything, all the development has been on Solana. And if you have landed up holding Solana, effectively, you've been destroyed. If you landed up holding ETH, you've been destroyed. If you've landed up holding the others, you've been absolutely destroyed. In fact, when we look at the altcoin performance in the last 90 days, these are the only altcoins that have outperformed Bitcoin in the last 90 days. So it's Fetch, BCH, 𝗬ie, 𝗖𝗏, Monero, 𝗕𝗃𝗃, and Hype. But what this doesn't show you is that if you look at most of these tokens beyond the 90 days, actually the performance has been quite bad. So you can kind of see it a bit clearer here. If you look at SOL from the 2021 cycle high, it's down 68%. If you look at, and you can see it on that chart over there. If you look at Dogecoin is down 86%. If you look at XRP from the 2017 high is down 82%. Binance Coin, BNB Coin, is down 68% from its 2022 high. So now the question becomes, with all this in mind, is it actually a viable strategy to carry on holding altcoins? Because I know we're here to make the returns, but the real question becomes, is it a viable strategy to be trading altcoins against Bitcoin? Because if you look at what the cycle data tells you, is it tells you that pretty much no altcoin lands up outperforming Bitcoin, or maybe one altcoin out of probably now, I think there's actually 50 million different altcoins. Probably 5 of them have outperformed Bitcoin. And if you look at multi-cycle, most of the altcoins haven't actually outperformed Bitcoin. So the question is whether there's actually any point in holding altcoins. And I think we need to do a little bit more of an analysis to actually understand what the answer is here. So no doubt, historically, in this technology class, holding Bitcoin over multi-cycle has been the best strategy, no matter what anyone tells you. However, there have been some coins that have actually outperformed Bitcoin. So if you look at the, for example, Solana, and you look at Solana since its inception, actually Solana actually has outperformed Bitcoin since its inception. I don't know if we can. So yeah, you can actually see it on this chart over here. So let me see if I can actually show you a chart here. So you can see, if you look at, since Solana was listed over here, and you look at the performance, it actually has outperformed Bitcoin. So I think the one lesson that we can take out of this is that there's always a certain point in time, always a certain point in the cycle where it will feel like Bitcoin has outperformed the altcoins. And the reason why that happens is because generally we look at this data when Bitcoin has outperformed all the alts. If you look at where we are in this cycle, Bitcoin has truly outperformed the alts. It's had the Bitcoin run. And the alts effectively haven't even started running yet. And so if you take a snapshot at this period in time, I think the snapshot is a pretty biased snapshot. Because there will be, and there has been, a period in any other cycle, and that's this period over here, where you take a snapshot, you say, wow, it really has been in my best interest to hold altcoins. So one of the biases here is that we're taking a period of time and we're measuring it specifically at a period of time where I would say the altcoin holders, it's not even me saying it, if you look at the charts, the altcoin holders are very, very, very much, the altcoin holders are very, very much at the point of max pain. So that I want you to keep that into account when we discuss the rest of the thesis. The other thing that I think is worth looking at here is that retail isn't here and really hasn't been here except for a very short period of time in January, in December and January. And that was when we were getting the AI agent run and we were getting the meme coin run and a whole lot of those other rallies. And barring that, if you actually look at the level of YouTube views here, the level of YouTube views here is the same as it's been since January 2022. I mean, in fact, it's slightly on the decline since January 2022. And so that just shows you that we haven't had a frenzy in the cycle of retailers actually coming in. But a frenzy is actually not guaranteed, right? In the previous times, the frenzies have been guaranteed, but in this time, the frenzy is actually not guaranteed. So let's and also I think the market structure is slightly different this time. I think the market structure is slightly different. In the old days, if you wanted the casino, you played altcoins, and if you wanted the safety, you went into Bitcoin and ETH. In this period, if you want the casino, you land up pretty much going into the trenches, right? And that really removes the use case for 95% of the other altcoins, because if you want casino, go to the trenches. If you want long-term safe haven, go to Bitcoin, right? And so you've really got a segmented market at the moment, whereas before, when the degenerate gamblers came into crypto, and I'll actually show you, like, I think a very good example is James Wynn, because I think this just shows the mentality. We all know James. James is the ultimate degenerate gambler. I think he's an unhealthy gambler, just for the record. I want to put it out there. I really think that he is a very, very, very irresponsible, degenerate gambler, not someone that we should look up to in terms of gambling. As much as I love his story, I don't think that this is how the market should be played. But what you can see here is that this segment of people that come to crypto to gamble are going straight into the casino. And that casino is where he says, the time has come for me to return to where I came from. And that was in the trenches, right? The motherfucking trenches, as he calls it, right? So the thing with the market is, if you look at the previous cycles were Bitcoin store of value, ETH promising future next asset, SOL future a promising future next asset, and the rest were casino. But the truth is that there's no better and no more fun casino than actually going to play in the trenches. So if you want trenches, if you want casino, go to the trenches. If you want stability, go to Bitcoin. So now, with all that in mind, let's actually talk about what are the options here. Because the options are, one, there's going to be no alt season. Two, there's going to be an alt season, but it's going to be a different alt season. Or three, there's going to be an alt season, but it's actually going to be delayed. And so we need to look at each one of those and allocate a probability to that scenario, right? Is there going to be no alt season? Is there going to be an alt season but a different alt season? Or is there going to be an alt season which is actually just kicked down the road and delayed? And if it is delayed, then what is the alt season actually waiting for? So I think let's quickly just analyze this market cycle. Okay, so I think that's probably a good place to start. This market cycle is a very, very, very different market cycle. I know a lot of people don't want to admit it. I know a lot of people don't want to believe it. But this market cycle is the first market cycle that we are driven by real institutional money, right? So if you look at the buyers in the previous market cycles, the buyers in the previous market cycles were crypto funds and crypto degens. And the crypto funds and crypto degens, what they could do is they could buy Bitcoin, they could buy ETH, they'd make their returns on Bitcoin, make their returns on ETH. And when they got very rich from Bitcoin and very rich from ETH, what they did was they took the coins and they sold the Bitcoin and ETH and they went down or up the risk, down the coin curve, but up the risk curve and actually invested in alts, right? That was the previous market cycle. But from a structural point of view, no one can deny that this market cycle is different, and that the buyers that are buying and the buyers that are driving this market cycle are made up of institutional buyers, and they're either buying through the ETF or they are buying through the MicroStrategy type vehicles, right? So that's where the two buyers in the market are actually coming from. And these buyers are never, ever, ever going to rotate their profits into ETH and altcoin, maybe ETH and maybe SOL if an ETF comes. But otherwise, these buyers are never, ever, ever rotating into altcoins. And so already from that point of view, there's been a structural change in the market. And so I don't believe that you can expect an altcoin like an alt season, like the previous alt seasons that we had. So so the question is, buyers are a completely different buyer, which means that the market structure is a completely different market structure. Okay, so now at the same time, we could get a higher risk on season, which I'm going to call it an alt season, because there's going to be a period where a lot of people feel like they're getting a lot richer, right? And when people get richer, they tend to take more risks to make money. So I don't know if you've ever been in this scenario before, but when the market's down, you pretty much land up going back into Bitcoin. And the reason why I did is because you want to try and protect your wealth. You should be going the other way, but you don't. And so what happens is when people feel richer, then they start taking more risks. And when they take more risks, they allow themselves to go higher up the risk curve or lower down the coin curve, right? And so you get the shift from let's just go into CoinGecko. Here we go. So you get the shift over here where you say you're going from you go from Bitcoin to ETH, and then you start going all the way down into all the risk curves. And the more risk you can take, the lower down the number of coins that you can actually move. And so I do believe that at some point there's going to be a period where people start to feel richer. And when the people actually do start feeling richer, they will actually take more risk and put more money going down the risk curve. And when they do, I think that alts are actually going to respond. But I don't think it's going to be all altcoins, right? And so I think that the idea is to say, when is that going to happen? Well, again, my thesis for when this is going to happen is a very mathematical thesis. It's all got to do with money supply and quantitative easing. Right now, the Fed is still in effect quantitative tightening. They're still taking money out of the economy. When the Fed increase their balance sheet, which is what happened here in the previous alt season, that's when you're going to get people feeling richer, because there will be more money in the consumer's pocket. And when there's more money in the consumer's pocket, then you're going to get into a situation when where people feel richer, and then they go down the risk curve. And so I do believe that as soon as quantitative easing comes, we will get an alt season. But I think it's going to be a very, very, very different alt season. There's absolutely no way that we can have an alt season like the one that we had in 2021 and the one that we had in 2017 and 2018. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely no way. Why? Because there are many, many, many more tokens on the market right now. There are 50 million tokens on the market right now. Let that sink in. There's 50 million tokens on the market with 600 million market participants. Effectively, that means that there's 12 tokens, 12 market participants per token, unique token that is on the market. And on top of that, there's a whole lot of token unlocks which are starting to happen, right? There's too many altcoins and too many altcoins of those altcoins being put into circulation because of the market structure. And so I think that there's absolutely, absolutely no way that we can bring in enough people to actually drive those tokens up. But again, that's it. I do believe that we're going to get into a period where a lot more altcoins significantly outperform Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's already had a run. Altcoins haven't had a run yet, or most altcoins haven't had a run yet. And you can see that's the altcoins relative to Bitcoin over here. So I do believe we are going to have an altcoin season. I just don't believe that it's going to be the same altcoin season. And so I read this. It says altcoins is a time to lose hope yet. In the past Bitcoin cycles, the proportion of mid to long-term holdings mid volume steadily decreased, leading to a consistent rise in the Bitcoin price as new capital flowed into the markets. In the latter part of the cycle, saw the altcoins experience significant surges as well. However, in the current cycle, Bitcoin repeatedly faces corrections after small gains, and during these periods, altcoins suffer sharp declines. At this stage of the cycle, it's nearly impossible to find investors making profits with altcoins. Yet as the cycle approaches its final stages, Bitcoin dominance is likely to decrease, and altcoins may see steeper rises in previous patterns, potentially marking the end of the cycle or towards the end of the cycle. It's not time to abandon hope just yet. We're just not already since we're already in the latter half of the cycle, it's worth waiting for Bitcoin's next pump upwards. And so what he's saying is, at some point, we're going to get a pump upwards, which is actually going to take the altcoins with it, because the juice is going to be squeezed out of the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin juice is going to be squeezed, and people are going to go higher up the risk curve to actually get their returns. But I don't believe that every coin is going to run. I think that the coins that are going to run are going to be a very select few coins, and then a lot of coins in the trenches. So then we're going to see a market separation, which says there's going to be two types of, obviously all coins will go up, but we won't have a crazy run. The coins that will actually go up will be a select handful of the top coins, which really have fundamentals, use cases, network effects, right? And you can kind of already see it in the patterns. Like if you look at the altcoins that have already outperformed Bitcoin, Hyperliquid, amazing use case and stuff like that. 𝗬𝗎, the up and coming. You have XRP, but I think that's very much a catch-up trade, right? So I think the game here in this alt season is, if you believe that there's going to be more liquidity and you believe there's going to be, what you should pretty much do is you should buy the strong fundamental infrastructural altcoins, and then you should probably go very much down the risk curve in like a barbell type strategy, where you go into very high risk, small bets, lots of high risk stuff. You can even go into the trenches if you want to do something like that, even though your probabilities there are much lower. And that is when you're going to get, that is where you're pretty much going to get your returns. But I don't think you're going to get a rising tide lifts all ships type scenario. So I think the right strategy is to say, look, if you're a conservative investor, get into just good quality stuff. Bitcoin, ETH. I'm not a big fan of ETH. Bitcoin, Hyperliquid, Solana, 𝗬𝗎, maybe an AI play, Curve for a stablecoin play, maybe Syrup, etc. And then go into the end of the risk curve, which is like the fiat coins, which is like the SPXs, which is something like that. That is pretty much how I would play this cycle. So again, are we going to have an alt season? I do believe we're going to have a period where alts start to perform better and Bitcoin dominance is going to drop. Is it going to be like the previous alt season? Absolutely not. Mathematically, I just don't see a way for that to be possible. And when will it actually happen? Well, it'll actually happen when we get some kind of money in circulation, which is probably only going to correspond to quantitative easing. So that is pretty much what I think is going to happen with altcoins. I do believe that we're taking altcoins at a very low part of the cycle. So if you're looking at your returns today and you're kicking yourself, I don't think you should kick yourself, because I think that there is, I was just sending James, someone was just, okay, we'll talk about, in fact, let's quickly talk about James Wynn. So I see there's a lot of talk on the management group, but something happened to James, Josh. Oh, he's asking for donations. Oh, you must be, oh my God. Oh, you must be joking. You must be joking. Look, yeah, so let's talk about James. I mean, we'll talk about him. I think the guy he's got a gambling problem. He's got a gambling addiction. He's now asking everyone to fund his thing as if you're fighting for the cabal. I wouldn't give any money to this, I got to be honest. I see also that he has started to sell. He started to sell he had Hyperliquid, which was staked, and he now he unstaked his Hyperliquid, and he's now put that into leverage trades. I really don't encourage anybody to trade like this guy's trading. I think it's terrible. And on that note, as I mentioned to you guys, Sheldon and I are doing a session on Thursday to teach people how to use leverage safely so that you don't get into this kind of situation. If you want to sign up for that, there is a link below. You have to sign up to CoinW account. The reason why you have to sign up to CoinW, there is a link because they are the guys sponsoring us, and we need to get your user ID to actually get in. So just sign up with this link over here. And that will get you into that leverage thing. And we're not asking you for money. It's not going to cost you anything. You don't have to. All you need to do is sign up with CoinW, and we will show you how to use leverage safely, because leverage actually can be a very good tool if you're trading. All right, lastly, listen, guys, I'm going to be in Hungary on Friday, right? So I'm going to be in Budapest on Friday night. If you guys want to meet up, and I don't know how many people actually live in Budapest or can be in Budapest or want to be in Budapest. If you guys want to have a meetup, fill in the form here that tells us that you're going to be in Budapest. Leave us your mobile number so we can actually text you details of where we actually book the meetup. Just give us those details. And if there's enough interest and there's enough people, we can actually do a meetup in Hungary, in Budapest, this Friday night, if you want to do it. All right, so I will see you guys again tomorrow. If Trump does resign, which I don't think he's going to do, we'll be live, of course, as that happens. Otherwise, I'll see you guys again tomorrow or in Friday in Hungary. Until then, trade well, my friends.